how the characters we followed for years in the MCU got their powers. Today, I'm going to break down all of them. Before we jump in, if you want more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Sentry. One of the most powerful and mysterious characters Marvel has ever introduced to the big screen. Robert Reynolds, known as the Sentry, makes his MCU debut in Thunderbolt. Now, the movie introduces Bob as an unstable super soldier experiment with massive power levels, but the MCU doesn't fully explain where that power actually comes from. What we do know is that he's linked to both the Sentry and the Void, which is his dark counterpart. Control is a central issue for him, and that instability is clearly tied to whatever they did to him. In the comics, the origin is more specific. Robert Reynolds breaks into a lab and drinks an experimental super soldier serum tied to something called Project Sentry. This wasn't just another Captain America formula, it was amplified to an insane degree. The result gave him power on a cosmic level, often described as solar-like energy manipulation. But the catch is the Void, a dark manifestation that represents everything negative about his psyche. The more power he uses, the more the Void threatens to take over. Scarlet Witch. Wanda Maximoff's origin in the MCU has layers that took years to fully understand. It started with Hydra's experiments using Loki's scepter, which we later learned contained the Mind Stone. Wanda and her brother Pietro volunteered for these experiments, and while most subjects died, she survived. But here's what the MCU only revealed later. The Mind Stone didn't give her powers. It awakened something already inside her. WandaVision and Agatha all along hint that Wanda was born with latent magical ability. The Mind Stone just amplified and unlocked what was already there. This makes her different from other enhanced individuals. She wasn't just modified, she was activated. Over time, she learned to refine control, and her study of the Darkhold pushed her abilities into dangerous new territory, corrupting her in the process. In the comics, her power is specifically tied to chaos magic, the ability to manipulate probability and reality itself. The MCU hints at this without fully defining it. What's clear is that she's among the most powerful beings in the multiverse, and the Mind Stone was just the catalyst, not the source. Wolverine. Logan is a mutant, pure and simple. He was born with his powers. That's how mutation works. His primary ability is an accelerated healing factor that lets him recover from almost any wound, and it also slows his aging dramatically. The claws? Those are bone. They're part of his anatomy, extending from between his knuckles. What most people think of as his signature feature, the metal came later and wasn't natural at all. The Weapon X program captured Logan and forcibly bonded adamantium to his entire skeleton, including those bone claws. Adamantium is virtually indestructible once it sets, and the only reason Logan survived the procedure is because of his healing factor. Anyone else would have died from the trauma. This combination made him one of the deadliest fighters alive, a mutant healing ability merged with an unbreakable skeleton. In Deadpool and Wolverine, we see variants of Logan across the multiverse, confirming he exists within the broader MCU context now. The core mechanics stay the same across versions. Born a mutant, made into a weapon. His healing is what makes everything else possible. Loki.
You want to be king? I don't want to be, I was born to be.
Loki's abilities come from a combination of heritage and learned skill, but the MCU never really shows us the training. What we know is that he's a frost giant by birth son of Laufey, but was adopted and raised by Odin as an Asgardian prince. His Jotun genetics give him certain natural abilities, like resistance to extreme cold and the blue skin transformation he usually suppresses. But the sorcery? That's where things get less defined. Loki is shown using illusions, shape-shifting, and various magical abilities throughout the films, but the MCU never depicts him actually learning any of this. It's implied that he studied magic, possibly taught by Frigga, who was also a skilled practitioner. What the MCU treats as innate talent is probably a mix of natural aptitude and intensive study we just never see on screen. His intelligence, cunning, and magical skill all combine to make him dangerous, but none of it is the result of an experiment or accident. Vision's creation is one of the more detailed origin sequences in the MCU. He started as the vibranium body Ultron was building for himself a synthetic form meant to be the ultimate vessel. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner intercepted it and uploaded Jarvis, Tony's AI, into the body's neural matrix. But that alone wasn't enough to bring him to life. Thor arrived and hit the cradle with lightning, and that energy surge completed the process. Vision woke up, immediately demonstrated advanced cognition, and famously proved his worthiness by casually lifting Mjolnir. His powers stem from multiple sources working together. The vibranium body gives him durability and the ability to manipulate his own density. He can become intangible or incredibly dense at will. The Mind Stone embedded in his forehead gave him energy projection, enhanced intellect, and a form of consciousness that blurred the line between AI and living being. After Thanos ripped out the Mind Stone, Vision was rebuilt without it. This new version, sometimes called White Vision, has the same body and capabilities but initially lacked the memories and emotional core that made Vision who he was. Winter Soldier. Bucky Barnes didn't choose to become the Winter Soldier. Everything about that transformation was done to him against his will over decades of captivity. When he fell from the train in 1945, he was presumed dead, but Hydra recovered him. He'd already received a version of Zola's experimental serum earlier during his capture, which may be part of why he survived the fall at all. Hydra gave him a cybernetic arm to replace the one he lost and began a brutal regimen of brainwashing and conditioning. They wiped his memories repeatedly, turning him into a weapon with no sense of self. Between missions, they kept him in cryogenic stasis, which is why he's still relatively young despite being born in 1917. His abilities are essentially enhanced strength, speed, and reflexes from the serum, combined with the raw power of that metal arm. But the skill comes from decades of being deployed as an assassin. The tragedy is that none of this was his choice. Hydra created a perfect killer by erasing the person he used to be. Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff doesn't have superpowers. Let's be clear about that. Everything she does comes from training extreme, intensive, childhood-consuming training. The Red Room took her as a young girl and turned her into one of the most dangerous operatives on the planet through sheer conditioning. She was taught combat, espionage, manipulation, infiltration, and assassination. The program didn't just train bodies, it broke down identities and rebuilt them as weapons. Natasha was conditioned to suppress emotion, complete missions at any cost, and use every tool available. The MCU shows that Black Widows were also chemically sterilized and given psychological conditioning to ensure loyalty. Natasha broke free of that control, but the skills remained. What makes her exceptional isn't any enhancement, it's the complete elimination of hesitation combined with world-class combat ability. Iron Man. Tony Stark's origin might be the most grounded in the MCU. There's no serum, no radiation, no cosmic accident. He got kidnapped by terrorists in Afghanistan while demonstrating weapons for the military. Shrapnel from one of his own bombs lodged near his heart, slowly killing him. Another captive scientist, Ho Yinsen, implanted an electromagnet powered by a car battery to keep the shrapnel from reaching his heart. Tony's captors wanted him to build them a missile. Instead, he miniaturized an arc reactor, a technology his father had worked on small enough to fit in his chest. This replaced the car battery and gave him a sustainable power source. Then he used the remaining materials to build a crude suit of armor, the Mark I, and fought his way out. Everything after that is iteration. The suit technology improved dramatically once he got back to his lab, but the core concept never changed. A genius-level inventor using technology to make himself a superhuman threat. His power is his mind. Hulk. Bruce Banner became the Hulk through a lab accident, but the details matter. He was working on a project he believed was about radiation resistance, a way to protect soldiers. What he didn't know was that the military, specifically General Ross, was actually trying to recreate the super soldier serum using gamma radiation instead. Bruce exposed himself to a massive dose of gamma rays during a test. Instead of killing him, which should have happened, the radiation triggered a transformation. Under extreme stress or anger, his body mutates into the Hulk, a massive green creature with strength that scales with his emotional state. The angrier he gets, the stronger he becomes, with seemingly no upper limit. What we do know is that Bruce didn't want this. He wasn't trying to become a hero. He was trying to help, and the result was something he spent years running from before eventually merging both identities into Smart Hulk.
Big monster!
Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers got her powers from the Tesseract, but not directly. She was a pilot working with Dr. Wendy Lawson, who was actually a Kree scientist named Mar-Vell. Lawson had built an experimental light-speed engine powered by energy from the Tesseract, which we now know contained the Space Stone. When Kree forces attacked, Carol destroyed the engine to keep it from enemy hands. The explosion released the Tesseract's energy directly into her body, fundamentally altering her on a cellular level. Instead of dying, she absorbed that power. The Kree took her, gave her a blood transfusion, and told her she owed them for saving her life. They also fitted her with an implant that suppressed most of her abilities. For years, Carol operated at a fraction of her potential, believing the Kree had given her everything she had. The truth was the opposite. They were limiting her. Once she removed that inhibitor, she unlocked the full scope of her powers: energy projection, flight, near invulnerability, and the ability to absorb and redirect energy attacks.
Something just entered the upper atmosphere.
Daredevil. Matt Murdock is a fascinating case because his powers came from something that should have been purely tragic. As a kid, he pushed a man out of the way of an oncoming truck carrying hazardous chemicals. The chemicals splashed across his face and blinded him permanently. But they also did something else. They enhanced his remaining senses to superhuman levels. Matt can hear heartbeats from across a room. He can smell fear on someone's skin. His sense of touch is so acute he can read print through his fingertips by feeling the ink. Combined, these senses create something like a radar that lets him navigate the world despite being blind. But raw ability isn't useful without training. That's where Stick came in, a blind warrior who recognized Matt's potential and trained him to channel those senses into combat. Stick was harsh, even cruel at times, but he turned Matt into a weapon. What makes Daredevil unique is that combination: accidental sensory enhancement shaped through brutal, intentional training. Hawkeye, Clint Barton, has no powers. None. Zero enhancement, no serum, no accidents, no mutations. He's just really, really good at what he does. And honestly, that might be the most impressive thing about him. The MCU has never fully shown Clint's backstory. We know he was a SHIELD agent, one of their best, and that he's been operating at elite levels for decades. What we see is a man with perfect aim, incredible reflexes, and tactical awareness that lets him compete alongside gods and super soldiers. His arrows are often specialized, explosive, grappling, electrical, but the skill to put them exactly where they need to go is pure Clint. He's hearing impaired and still fights at peak effectiveness. He takes on enemies way above his weight class constantly. Hawkeye's power is that he never misses, and he earned that through years of dedication. Yelena Belova. Yelena went through the same Red Room program as Natasha, just in a different generation. She was taken as a child, conditioned, trained, and turned into a Black Widow. The process was identical: brutal physical training, psychological conditioning, and the elimination of personal identity in service of the mission. What makes Yelena's experience distinct is how she was controlled. By the time she was active, the Red Room had refined its methods. Dreykov used chemical mind control to ensure complete obedience. Widows weren't just trained to follow orders, they were literally unable to disobey. Yelena broke free of this control with an antidote during the events of Black Widow, and that liberation forced her to confront everything she'd done while controlled. Her abilities are the same as any Widow: expert combat, weapons proficiency, espionage skills, and high pain tolerance. No superpowers, just conditioning. Professor X. Charles Xavier is a mutant, born with telepathic abilities that manifested early in his life. Unlike characters who gain powers through experiments or accidents, Xavier's abilities are genetic part of his DNA. The X gene activated during childhood, and he grew up learning to live with voices in his head before he even understood what was happening. The MCU has only shown us alternate universe versions of Xavier so far.
Our final member, Professor Charles Xavier.
Specifically, the Charles from Earth, 838 inches Doctor Strange, in the Multiverse of Madness. That version led the Illuminati and demonstrated powerful mental abilities, but the film doesn't explore his origin. In the comics, Xavier's powers include reading minds, projecting thoughts, creating illusions, and in some cases, completely controlling other people. He's considered one of the most powerful telepaths in existence.
Easy, chaps.
Magneto. Eric Lenscher is a mutant with the power to control magnetic fields, but the MCU mainline hasn't detailed his origin yet. In the comics, Eric's powers manifested during the Holocaust. He was a Jewish child in a concentration camp, and the extreme trauma triggered his mutation. The ability to control magnetism sounds simple, but it's actually one of the most versatile powers in Marvel. Magneto doesn't just move metal, he manipulates electromagnetic fields themselves. This lets him fly, create force shields, sense electrical signals, and theoretically affect anything with a magnetic signature. His power scales with concentration and emotional intensity, which is why his rage makes him so dangerous. What the MCU will do with this remains to be seen. The Holocaust origin is core to his character and motivation, explaining why he views humanity as an existential threat to mutants. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe and turn on the notifications. And tell me in the comments what you want to see next. See you in the next one.